People today got a real misunderstanding about what modesty means. We live in a world that celebrates exposure but forgets about essence. We've got folks thinking that if you're not showing everything, you're somehow hiding something, when in reality, you're protecting something sacred. Now, when we talk about the hijab in Islam, let me tell you this, it ain't about oppression. It's about expression. The hijab is not a chain, it's a choice. It's not meant to hide beauty. It's meant to honor it. And that's a powerful thing. I've met women who wear the hijab, and let me tell you, those women walk with a kind of confidence and peace you can't buy. You can't fake it. They know who they are, and they don't need the world's approval to feel beautiful. Because when you're rooted in your faith, when you understand that your worth comes from God, not from likes or attention, baby, you walk different. Let me break it down this way. We live in a culture that tells women, you got to show more to be seen. But what Islam teaches through modesty says the opposite. You don't need to show more. You already are enough. That's not restriction. That's liberation. That's real freedom. See, society tells you your values and how you look, but faith tells you your value is in who you are. When a woman puts on her hijab, she's saying, I choose to be seen from my mind, my heart, and my soul, not my body. And that right there is power. Because real power isn't loud, it's quiet confidence. It's the kind that doesn't need validation. Now, let me tell you something else. The hijab and modesty in general, it's not just about women, it's about men too. Islam teaches modesty for both genders. It's about humility, decency, and respect. The kind that says, I see you as a person, not a product. When a man learns to lower his gaze and respect a woman's space, that's not weakness, that's discipline, that's control. That's real manhood. You see, modesty protects both sides. It builds a society based on dignity, not desire. It creates an environment where people can truly connect, heart to heart, not body to body. That's deep, man. Now, I know some folks out there think the hijab is outdated, like it doesn't fit in the modern world. But let me tell you, faith never goes out of style. Values don't expire. When you've got purpose, you don't follow trends, you set standards. And if you look at it closely, even outside religion, people who carry themselves with modesty always command respect. You walk into a room covered up with confidence and everybody takes notice because people feel your presence, not your presentation. I once heard someone say, modesty hides beauty. No. Modesty reveals real beauty. The kind that doesn't fade, the kind that doesn't age, the kind that draws people to your energy, not your outfit. Because the truth is, when you're modest, you're not competing for attention. You're living for purpose. Let me tell you something from my own journey. There was a time in my life when I thought success meant being seen, being known, being everywhere. But as I grew in faith and wisdom, I realized something powerful. The most valuable things in life are hidden. You don't see gold lying around in the streets. It's buried deep. You don't see diamonds just hanging on trees. They're formed under pressure, hidden in the dark. So when a woman chooses to cover, she's saying, I know my worth, and you got to come correct if you want to see my shine. That's power. That's confidence. That's self-worth. And brothers, let's be real. Any man who truly respects himself and his faith will respect that kind of woman because he knows that her modesty doesn't take away her beauty. It elevates it. It shows she's grounded, strong, and faithful. Now, modesty ain't about judging others either. It's not about saying, I'm better than you because I cover more. No. That's not what Islam teaches. Modesty is a personal journey between you and God. It's about humility. It's about saying, I don't need to flaunt what God gave me to know that I'm blessed. And when that understanding hits your heart, it changes everything, how you talk, how you walk, how you treat people. Because modesty starts on the inside before it ever shows on the outside. You see, in Islam, modesty or hayat is described as part of faith. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, modesty is a branch of faith. That means it's not just an appearance. It's an attitude. It's a lifestyle of humility and respect, not just for yourself, but for others and for God. When you live with modesty, you stop trying to prove your worth to people because you already know your worth in the eyes of your Creator. That's why women who wear hijab walk with peace. They're not trying to impress anybody. They already know who they are. And I'll tell you something, confidence rooted in faith will always outshine confidence rooted in fashion. Because fashion changes. Faith doesn't, fashion fades. Faith endures. So to every young woman watching this, wondering if being modest means being left out, hear me now, you are not behind, you are ahead. You've already won the race the moment you stop chasing worldly validation. You don't need to be seen by everyone. You just need to be right with God. That's power, that's peace, that's purpose. And to the world, let's stop looking at the hijab like a symbol of silence. It's not silence, it's strength wrapped in fabric. It's a declaration that says, I know who I am, I know whose I am, and I don't need your approval to feel beautiful. So next time you see a woman wearing her hijab, don't see restriction, see royalty. Don't see oppression, see obedience. Don't see limitation, see liberation. Because modesty isn't about hiding from the world, it's about rising above it. And that, my friends, is what real power looks like. Let me tell you something real. In a world where everybody's trying to fit in, it takes real strength to stand out. And that's exactly what the hijab represents. See, when a woman puts on her hijab, she ain't just wearing a piece of cloth. She's putting on a crown. She's saying, this is who I am, and I'm proud of it. That's identity. That's purpose. That's power. Now, I know some folks don't understand it. They think the hijab is about hiding something, or it's about control. But no, man, the truth is the hijab is a declaration of strength. It's a woman saying, my beauty is my choice. My identity is mine. My faith defines me, not the world. Let's be honest. We live in a time where people are constantly chasing validation. You open your phone and everybody's posting pictures, counting likes, comparing themselves to strangers. But a woman in her hijab, she's not trying to keep up with trends. She's living by principles. She's not chasing attention. She's walking in intention. That's strength right there. And here's something deep. When a woman wears the hijab, she's reminding herself every single day that she represents something greater than herself. She carries her faith, her culture, her values wherever she goes. That's not easy, especially in a world that often misunderstands or misjudges her. You see, it takes courage to walk proudly in your beliefs when the world is telling you to blend in. It takes courage to say, I'm not ashamed of who I am. That's real strength. Not muscles, not fame, not money, but the strength to stand firm in your truth. And let me tell you something, strength isn't loud, it's quiet. It's the woman who walks into a room, head high, heart pure, knowing she doesn't need to prove a thing. Her presence speaks for her. When I look at women who wear the hijab, I see confidence that doesn't need an audience. I see peace that doesn't need validation. That's the kind of strength that moves mountains. See, everybody today wants to be powered, but real empowerment doesn't come from showing everything you got. It comes from knowing what to protect. It comes from having the discipline to say, not everything sacred needs to be seen. The hijab isn't weakness, it's spiritual armor. It shields the heart from vanity and the soul from noise. It reminds the believer, you belong to God before you belong to this world. And when you walk in that truth, you walk in unshakable power. Now, here's what's so special. The hijab isn't just about personal identity. It's a collective identity too. When Muslim women wear it, they carry a message to the world. We are proud of our faith, our values, and our dignity. It unites them, whether in Pakistan, Egypt, America, or France. That same scarf, that same modesty, connects millions of women through one message: faith over fashion, purpose over popularity. That's powerful. That's history being lived every day. And identity isn't about separation, it's about recognition. When a woman wears her hijab, she's saying, this is who I am, and I'm not afraid to be seen. She's showing her devotion to her Creator, her pride in her faith, and her confidence in her womanhood all at once. But it's not always easy. There's judgment, there's misunderstanding, there's pressure. Some people stare, some whisper, some criticize. But every time she walks out the door, choosing to honor her belief over the world's opinion, that's victory. That's bravery. Because strength isn't about never being challenged. It's about standing tall when you are. And that's exactly what the hijab symbolizes, standing tall in faith when the world tries to pull you down. Now, let me make this clear. True strength doesn't come from rebellion. It comes from conviction. It's easy to follow the crowd, but it takes faith to follow your heart. It takes grace to say, I'm not going to live by what people expect. I'm going to live by what God commands. And brothers, let's talk to you for a second. Real men respect that strength. They admire a woman who stands by her principles. Because a woman who honors herself, who carries herself with dignity. She don't attract boys, she attracts respect. The hijab, when you really understand it, is not a symbol of suppression, it's a symbol of self-respect. It says, I'm not here to please your eyes, I'm here to please my Lord. And any man worth something will see that and say, no, that's a woman with purpose. You see, in every faith, modesty and self-respect are celebrated. The hijab is just a unique and visible expression of that same truth, that your soul is your beauty, not your skin. It's a daily reminder that identity is not about imitation, it's about intention. It's not about blending in, it's about standing out with grace. Let me tell you a story. I once heard a man asked a woman why she chose to wear the hijab. She said, because every morning when I put it on, I remind myself that I'm representing something greater than fashion. I'm representing faith. Man, that's powerful. We need more of that in today's world. People who walk in their values, who wear their beliefs with pride, who don't bend every time the world changes its rules. Because listen, identity is not what the world gives you. It's what you decide for yourself. And if your identity is rooted in faith, no trend, no criticism, no pressure can shake you. That's the kind of strength that outlasts time. The hijab at its core is about knowing who you are even when others don't understand you. It's about walking in grace when others walk in judgment. It's about saying, I know my value and I refuse to compromise it. And I don't care where you come from. That's a message everybody can relate to. Because deep down, all of us are searching for identity, for purpose, for peace. The hijab is just one beautiful way of finding and expressing that connection to God. So to every woman who wears her hijab, don't let anybody make you feel less than. You are strong. You are seen. You are royal. You are a living example of faith in action. You don't need the world's applause when you already have God's approval. And let me tell you, that's the greatest feeling in the world. So next time somebody asks, why the hijab? Tell them, because it's my identity, my discipline, my devotion, and my strength. Tell them, because it reminds me that I belong to God and no one else defines me. Tell them, because it's not just what I wear. It's who I am. And that, my friend, is what true strength looks like. Not in showing more, but in knowing more. Not in following the world, but in following your faith. Not in blending in, but in standing out with dignity. That's the real meaning of the hijab. That's the real definition of identity and strength. Now let me tell you something real, something deep. Modesty ain't just about what you wear. It's about who you are when nobody's watching. You can wear the most covered clothes in the world, but if your heart's full of pride, envy, or arrogance, that's not modesty. And on the flip side, you might see somebody who doesn't wear a hijab yet still carries humility, grace, and kindness. That's the spirit of modesty. Because the truth is, modesty doesn't start in the body, it starts in the heart. It's not about fabric first, it's about faith first. See, in Islam, the idea of modesty or haya is much deeper than appearance. It's a spiritual quality. It's the awareness that you're always in the sight of God. And when that thought lives in your heart, it changes how you move, how you talk, how you treat people, how you look at yourself. That's what true modesty looks like, not perfection, but consciousness. Let me break it down like this. You ever seen somebody walk into a room and just radiate peace? They're not trying too hard, they're not showing off, but something about them draws you in. That's inner modesty. That's the glow of a heart connected to its creator. Now, we live in a world that praises the loudest voice, the flashiest look, the boldest personality. But God, he praises the humble soul, the one who stays kind even when nobody's clapping, the one who stays grateful even when life's tough, the one who treats people right, not for attention, but out of sincerity. That's modesty in motion. Let's be real. Some people think modesty means weakness. They think if you're quiet, humble, reserved, you're somehow less confident. But no, man. Modesty and confidence can live in the same house. In fact, the most confident people are the ones who don't need to shout about it. They walk with calm, they speak with respect, and their presence commands attention without demanding it. That's the kind of power modesty brings. Now let's talk about the hijab in that light, because the hijab isn't just a piece of fabric. It's a reminder. It's a daily check on the heart. Every morning when a woman puts it on, it's like she's saying, let me carry myself in a way that reflects my faith, not my ego. She's putting on not just a scarf, but a mindset, one of dignity, self-respect, and awareness of God. But again, the real meaning behind that act lies inside. If the heart is pure, the hijab becomes powerful. If the heart is lost, the hijab becomes just cloth. That's why Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, in the body there is a piece of flesh. If it is sound, the whole body is sound. He was talking about the heart. Because when your heart's in the right place, everything else falls into place. Now, let's be honest. We all struggle. Nobody's perfect. Everyone's on a journey. Some are trying to dress more modestly. Some are trying to speak more kindly. Some are trying to drop bad habits. But guess what? Every step counts when it's sincere. Because God don't look for perfection. He looks for progress. And that's why modesty is more than appearance. It's about intention. You can fool people, but you can't fool God. He sees your heart, your struggle, your sincerity. Now, I remember something my mama used to say, baby, stay humble no matter how high you climb. She meant, don't let success make you forget where your blessings come from. That's also modesty. Because modesty ain't just about clothing. It's also about ego. You can be dressed like a king and still be modest if your heart is humble. And you can be dressed like a saint but still be arrogant if your heart's proud. That's why true modesty is measured by attitude, not outfit. Let me give you an example. When someone insults you and you could clap back, but you choose peace instead, that's modesty. When you do good for someone but don't post it for likes, that's modesty. When you could brag but stay quiet and grateful, that's modesty. It's the little moments that show the size of your heart. And this applies to men too. Islam doesn't just ask women to be modest. It commands men to lower their gaze, to speak respectfully, to dress clean and carry dignity. See, modesty isn't gendered. It's universal discipline. It's God's way of saying, respect yourself and others. And that starts inside, because a modest heart produces modest behavior. A modest mind produces modest speech. And a modest soul shines brighter than any luxury or fame. Now, I know it's hard to stay humble when the world's shouting, look at me, all the time. Social media got everybody acting like life's a contest. Who's prettier, richer, smarter, happier? But let me tell you something. The loudest people online are often the emptiest inside. When you've got real peace, you don't need to prove it. When you've got real value, you don't need to flaunt it. When you've got real faith, you don't need to announce it. It shows in how you live. That's modesty. And here's the beauty of it. When you live with that kind of modesty, God elevates you. He puts light in your face, peace in your heart, and honor in your reputation. You might not be trending online, but you'll be remembered where it matters, in hearts and in heaven. So let's take this deeper. If you want to grow in modesty, don't just change your wardrobe, change your mindset. Ask yourself every day, am I seeking God's approval or people's applause? Because when you start living for Him, your life becomes calm. The noise fades. the pressure disappears, and you start walking in peace. See, that's why I say true modesty is power. Not the kind that yells or flexes, but the kind that anchors you when life gets loud. It's the calm in the storm, the dignity in the crowd, the grace that makes people say there's something special about that person. And if your heart is modest, everything else follows naturally. Your tone softens, your eyes reflect compassion, your actions carry sincerity. That's what faith looks like in motion. And that's what makes the hijab and modesty in Islam so much more than appearance. So to all my sisters and brothers out there, don't chase the image the world gives you. Build the heart God wants from you. Because when the heart is right, everything else falls into divine order. Let your modesty speak without you saying a word. Let your humility shine brighter than any spotlight. And remember, the truest kind of beauty isn't the one people see, it's the one God recognizes. That's what it means when we say true modesty begins in the heart, and once it's there, it reflects in everything you do. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's not silence, that's strength and peace. Because when your heart bows to God, you walk taller than anyone else ever could. Let me tell you something, man. One of the most powerful things a person can do in this world is choose. And one of the most dangerous things we can do is judge someone for their choice. Now, when it comes to the hijab, or any act of faith, really, the most important thing people need to understand is this: it's a personal decision between a woman and her creator. Nobody gets to define it for her. Nobody gets to shame her for it. Nobody gets to take it away. You see, we talk a lot about freedom these days. Freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of choice. But somehow, when a woman chooses modesty, chooses faith, chooses the hijab, suddenly that freedom doesn't count. That ain't right. That's not freedom. That's hypocrisy. Because true freedom means you respect someone's right to live by their own values, even when you don't understand them. Now, I've talked to a lot of people, and here's what I've seen when a woman wears her hijab. Some folks instantly assume she's oppressed, controlled, or silenced. But let me tell you something. The strongest, boldest, most self-aware women I've ever met are women of faith who wear their hijab with pride. They don't do it to please people. They do it to please God. And you know how powerful that is. To live your life based on conviction, not convenience, that's strength, that's courage, that's freedom in its purest form. But see, society got it twisted. We've built a culture that celebrates exposure, but questions expression. You can take off whatever you want, and folks will call that empowerment. But if you put something on out of devotion, suddenly it's a problem. That's not equality. That's selective empowerment. Let me make something clear: respect goes both ways. If a woman chooses to wear the hijab, respect that. If she chooses not to, respect that too. Because respect ain't about agreement, it's about honor. It's about understanding that faith is a journey, not a uniform. See, a lot of people think the hijab is about control, but they forget it's supposed to be an act of love, not force. When it's chosen freely, it's one of the most beautiful expressions of devotion you'll ever see. It says, I choose to honor God with how I carry myself. I choose dignity over display. And that kind of choice deserves nothing but respect. Now let me speak to the men for a second. Brothers, hear me. It's not your job to dictate what a woman wears. It's your job to protect and respect her choice. Islam doesn't give you power over women. It gives you the responsibility to stand beside them with honor. When a woman covers herself out of faith, your job is to support her, not silence her. To defend her when the world mocks her. To speak up when people misunderstand her. That's what real manhood looks like. Because a real man doesn't feel threatened by a woman's conviction. He's inspired by it. And ladies, never let anyone make you feel small for living by your faith. You don't need validation from the crowd when you've got affirmation from the Creator. The world might not always understand your choice, but that's okay. They didn't design your path. God did. And God sees every struggle, every tear, every moment you choose Him over comfort. Every time you walk out wearing your hijab, despite the stares or the comments, God records that. Every time you explain your faith with grace instead of anger, God sees that too. That's strength no one can measure. Let's be real. It takes courage to live your truth in a world that constantly tells you to compromise. It takes discipline to hold on to faith when trends are screaming the opposite. And it takes confidence to stand tall when people question your values. So when a woman wears her hijab, don't you dare see weakness. See warrior energy. Because she's fighting battles you don't even know about every single day. I remember once talking to a Muslim sister backstage after one of my shows. She said, Steve, people always ask me if I'm forced to wear the hijab. I tell them, nobody forces me, I force myself because I love my Lord more than I love fitting in. Man, I'll never forget that. That's conviction right there. That's the kind of strength that moves me. And you know what's sad? Too many people judge before they ask. They see a scarf and assume silence. But if they ever sat down and talked to a woman of faith, they realize that hijab doesn't silence her voice. It amplifies her truth. Because the hijab says, you will see me for my character, not my curves. It says, you will hear my thoughts, not just notice my looks. It says, you can't define me. I already know who I am. That's not oppression. That's ownership. You see, when a woman knows who she is, the world can't tell her who to be. And that's what the hijab represents. clarity, confidence, and control over one's identity. Now listen, respecting the choice of modesty doesn't mean you have to share it, but you do have to recognize it as sacred, because every human being deserves the dignity of living according to their conscience. And when you look at it that way, the hijab becomes something universal, a symbol that reminds all of us to respect differences, to protect freedom, and to honor devotion. Because at the end of the day, faith is personal. The way you pray, the way you dress, the way you worship, it's between you and God, and none of us have the right to step in between that relationship. So let's stop talking about women of faith and start listening to them. Let's stop assuming and start understanding. Let's replace judgment with curiosity and criticism with compassion. Because when we truly respect each other's choices, that's when peace starts. Now, if you ask me, the most beautiful thing about a woman who wears her hijab is not the cloth on her head. It's the conviction in her heart. It's the quiet strength that says, I choose obedience over opinion. It's the inner light that no one can dim. And that, my friend, is what real empowerment looks like. So the next time you see a woman in her hijab smile, don't pity her. Don't question her. Just recognize that you're in the presence of someone walking boldly in her purpose. Respect her choice. Respect her courage. Respect her faith. Because when you respect the choice, you respect the woman. And when you respect the woman, you respect humanity itself. That's how we build understanding. That's how we build unity. That's how we build peace. And that's what true respect in God's eyes really means. Let me tell you something, family. In this world today, everybody's trying to make a statement. People want to be seen, to be noticed, to stand out. They'll do anything to be liked, followed, or validated. But there's something real powerful, something rare, about a person who says, I don't need the world's approval because I already have God's. Modesty is not just fabric. It's a message, it's a quiet but mighty declaration that says, I belong to God, not the trends, not the culture, not the crowd. See, when a woman chooses modesty, she's not just covering her body. She's uncovering her soul's loyalty. She's saying, I know my worth, and it doesn't depend on how much I show. It depends on how much I honor who I am. And that right there, that's strength. That's power. That's confidence rooted in faith, not fashion. Now, I know we live in a world that tells you the opposite. It says, show more to be valued. It says, dress less to feel confident. It says, do whatever it takes to get attention. But the truth is, attention is temporary. Respect is permanent. And modesty, real modesty, earns you respect. It's not about being old-fashioned. It's not about being weak. It's about walking this earth, knowing who you belong to and what you stand for. Let me break this down the Steve Harvey way. If you got a diamond, a real one, you don't just toss it around in the street. You protect it, you secure it, you cover it, because you know its value. Well, that's what modesty is. It's the mindset of someone who knows their worth and refuses to cheapen it for validation. And here's the thing, modesty ain't just for women. It's for all of us. Men, women, young, old, every believer is called to walk in humility, dignity, and respect. Modesty starts in the heart before it ever shows up in your clothing. See, you can wear the finest robe, the longest hijab, but if your heart is full of arrogance, jealousy, or judgment, that's not modesty. That's pride disguised. Because true modesty is about posture, not appearance. It's about who you are when nobody's watching. It's about how you treat people when they can't give you anything back. Now, let's talk about the women who wear their hijab or dress modestly in public. Sis, when you step out like that, you're preaching without words. You're sending a sermon just by walking down the street. You're saying, I'm not here to please this world. I'm here to please my Lord. And let me tell you, that's one of the boldest messages anyone can ever deliver. Because this world don't make it easy. It'll call you outdated, it'll mock your faith, it'll test your patience. But when you stay true to who you are, when you wear your values like a crown, you're showing what real beauty looks like. Real beauty is not about exposure, it's about expression, expressing your love for God, your self-respect, your identity. The hijab, the modest dress, the lowered gaze. All of it says, I'm aware of my purpose. I'm walking with intention, I'm not lost in this noise. You see, modesty is rebellion in a world obsessed with attention. It's saying, I choose discipline over display, peace over popularity, substance over style. That's real power. And let me tell you something from experience. When you live for people's approval, you'll always be exhausted. But when you live for God's approval, you'll always be at peace. That's what modesty gives you. Peace. It's the calm that comes from not competing. It's the contentment that comes from knowing your value doesn't need to be proven. And it's the confidence that comes from understanding your body, your heart, your soul are sacred gifts, not public property. And look, I know, modesty ain't easy. It takes strength to go against the grain. It takes conviction to stand out for faith when everybody else is blending in for fame. But understand this, every time you choose modesty, you're choosing God over ego. And every time you do that, heaven notices. Now let me tell you something personal. The older I get, the more I realize that everything this world tells you to chase eventually fades. Looks fade. Likes fade. But character, that's eternal. Faith, that's forever. And that's why modesty matters. It's a reflection of your inner character. It's a way of telling the world, I know what's temporary, and I know what's eternal. You see, modesty isn't about hiding. It's about revealing who you really are, someone whose heart beats for God, not for validation. Now, don't let anyone shame you for it. You don't owe an explanation for your faith. You don't have to defend your devotion. You just keep walking in your purpose, because the one who matters most already sees you, already knows you, already loves you. When you walk in modesty, you're walking in divine alignment. And when you walk in divine alignment, you attract divine favor, because God honors those who honor him. So every morning you wrap that hijab or choose a dress that reflects your faith, know that you're not just getting ready for the world. You're preparing to represent your Creator. You're saying, Lord, today I belong to you. And that message, that's louder than any trend, any logo, any filter. Now, let me end this like I always do, with a truth straight from the heart. The world will always have opinions. People will always talk. But one day, none of their voices will matter. Only God's will. So stop trying to be understood by everyone and start trying to be right with him. Because at the end of the day, modesty is not about pleasing people. It's about reflecting grace. It's not about covering up beauty. It's about protecting something sacred. And when you choose modesty, you're not saying, I'm less. You're saying, I'm enough. You're saying, I'm proud of my faith. You're saying, I belong to God. So wear that truth boldly. Walk with your head high. Let your modesty be your message, not of silence, but of strength. Not of restriction, but of reverence. Not of fear, but of faith. Because when you move through this world with that kind of clarity, that kind of conviction, nothing can shake you. Not judgment, not mockery, not rejection. Because you know who you are and you know whose you are. And that, my friend, is the kind of confidence that can only come from God.